Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is John Papa. I'm the president of DPS Advisors. Appreciate you taking the night out of your time out of your day to come here Monday night at the Roseland Library. A little housekeeping stuff first before we start. Every one of you, well, let me talk more about your cell phones. If you can, if you have your cell phone with you, if you don't mind just turning it to vibrate or shutting it off for a little bit, we're gonna talk, and sometimes they go off and it disrupts the presentation. And also, everyone has received one of these sheets, and we're gonna offer everybody a consultation, free consultation, to come into our office in Roseland and talk about, what financial issues could be happening in your life, and why you came and what you want to learn about. If there's things that we can help you with, we'll be more than happy to. So I started this practice. People want to know, who's John Papa, who's Diversified Planning Strategies. I started this practice with my dad 40 years ago. I grew up, I was born and raised in this town in Roseland. Right now I live in Whippany with my wife. I'm married to Ted's sister. And we started this company as a family-run business. And right now in the company is myself, Ted, my brother-in-law, my son Luke, my daughter Alyssa. Sue's been with me for 25 years. She's worked with me and my dad for a long, long time, and to put up with us for 25 years is a lot. So she's like family as well. We're really a small family-run operation. We manage about $350 million of client assets, and we love using libraries like this because our motto, and I just said it on the TV show, is to educate and empower you so you can make better decisions with your hard-earned money. So tonight we're going to talk about three topics that really impact you here in the room, right? And once you're over, 50, 55 years old, you got to start thinking about Social Security. When do I want to turn it on? What are the rules? Talk about taxes on qualified plans. I just gave an example on that show about doing some tax planning strategies. We'll talk more tonight about a live case we're working on as well. And we want to talk about investing in the markets now. Like when you're older, it's investing in the markets is totally different when you're taking money from your accounts than when you are accumulating in your accounts. So we like to, and I know this probably isn't your all first rodeo of coming to one of these events. Typically, you go to the steakhouse, they're giving you a free steak and they're trying to sell you annuities, and this is not that, okay? You're not gonna be sold a thing here tonight. We're gonna educate you on the topics that we talked about, and we're gonna hopefully empower you to make a better decision with your hard-earned money. We like smaller groups because that allows me to say, hey, you guys have a question? Just raise your hand and ask it. We'll answer every question you have, and we'll go right through the presentation. It's about 6:30 or 6:40 right now. We should be done by 7:30, and hopefully we're going to enlighten you with some stuff, and we'll go from there. Is that fair? Everybody have any questions before we start? And I promise you're not going to be sold anything. Any questions? Cool. So besides the fact that I started this slide here is the compliance side. I know you can't read it, but what it basically is saying to you is what we talk about tonight, we're not talking to you specifically, we're talking in general. So if we give a strategy or an idea, don't go home and run and implement it because you heard us talk about it at the Roseland Library. Let's have a meeting first. Let's really tailor whatever strategy we talked about to you and make sure it's right for you. So don't go home and do that, okay? That's what that says. Now, again, why did you accept the invitation? Why John Papa? Who are we? Real quick, I'm going to give you a little other little background besides the fact that we are a 40-year company in Roseland, New Jersey. Has anybody heard of Fox Business or CNBC, these stations? Okay, yesterday on Fox Business at 2 o'clock, they had a show called The Wealth Council. I don't know if anybody watches it. I was one of the advisors on that show yesterday. So I was on Fox Business yesterday afternoon. I also did a show on CNBC called Worldwide Exchange, so we don't get political, but I was talking to them about income planning for retirees, and that show is broadcast in 90 countries. We have a very deep experience in this practice. That's what we do, okay? I've written articles for MSNBC, Benzinga, Market Watch. My TV show, The Papa Report, is on CW11 every other Sunday night. We're on a bunch of New Jersey 12 network. So we have a pretty extensive background in this retirement planning field. We're licensed fiduciaries. Has anybody heard of the word fiduciary and what that actually means? Okay, for those of you who haven't, I'm going to give you a quick analogy. Okay, we're like Home Depot. So let's say your current advisor, you work at the big box firm, you're working with somebody at the big box firm, and I'm being recorded, so we're not going to mention names. Let's say you need a hammer to hang up one of these beautiful pictures that these kids drew, okay? And that big box firm advisor sold you a 20-pound hammer. That's a suitable recommendation. You asked for a hammer, they sold you a hammer, and let's say you get hurt swinging that 20-pound hammer. That advisor cannot get in trouble. You asked them for a hammer, they sold you one. If a fiduciary, if you filed a complaint with us selling you that 20-pound hammer, we're probably going to get fined for that. What do I mean by that? Because I'm Home Depot. I have to take you down to aisle 12 where the hammers are, and I have to ask you some medical questions. How's your shoulders? Any medical conditions I need to know about? Heart issues, cancer, orthopedic issues, elbow, shoulder, fingers, wrists, any issues. I have to take that standard of care to a higher level. That's the fiduciary standard. So if I sold you that 20-pound hammer, you get hurt, file a complaint, I'm getting fined. We are Home Depot. We go to the aisle, we find the right tool to do the job that you're trying to do. And if you come into our office and say, hey, I'm trying to build an income plan, the first thing we're going to say is, okay, what do you have in place right now? Because if it's good, as a fiduciary, we're going to tell you that. You know, I tell people all the time, hey, listen, what you have in place is great. Stick with it. You're doing a good job. And that's one of the benefits of coming to see us in the meeting, right? You're going to get a second opinion, and we're going to give you an honest second opinion because that's what our license says. So hopefully that's one of the reasons why you want to work with a fiduciary. And the other thing I'll say is you deserve or should be working with a fiduciary. And if you don't know if your current advisor is one or not, it's really simple. You ask them a question, say, hey, I heard this guy, I was wondering, are you a licensed fiduciary? And if they say yes, that's great. Just follow up with a second question. Which kind? Because there's only two. Registered investment advisor, which is what we are and my company is, or a certified financial planner, CFP. Those are the only two designations that can say they're licensed fiduciaries. And if your person answers yes, they better have a follow-up answer to, I'm either one of those two, okay? You need to work with a fiduciary, all right? So I told you our TV show, The Papa Report, is on New Jersey 12 Network, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m., rebroadcast at Saturday night after the news. Every other Sunday, we're on CW11. We were just added to CBS's station every Sunday morning at 9:30, CBS WLNY. And I also do a radio show on Sunday. Who listens to the radio? Does anybody listen to the radio anymore? Okay, I didn't believe anybody listened to the radio. I don't know, ever heard of WOR 710? Okay, 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, you'll hear me and Morgan Patrick, my host, talking for an hour on retirement planning subjects. So I'm on WOR 710. I love doing that show. We record it in our office. I have a radio room in my office, which is pretty cool. And we record it Monday mornings. I recorded it this morning with him for an hour. And they broadcast it on Sunday afternoons at 2 o'clock. So you'll hear me. We've gotten more clients from that radio show. It's amazing. And I didn't think anybody listened to the radio anymore, but a lot of people do. So if you're sitting around on a Sunday afternoon, you pop the radio on and hear WOR, you'll hear me and Morgan Patrick talking about retirement planning stuff. Wrote a book called Avoiding the Retirement Traps, and we just finished our second book called The Empowered Investor. That book is at the publisher right now. You guys can go to dpsbook.com and request a free copy of our books. We're going to also offer you, if you make an appointment here tonight, you don't have to go to the website. We'll give you a copy of our first book, Avoiding the Retirement Traps. And then as soon as we get our second one, we'll get that one out to you as well. So because you're an attendee here, you don't have to worry about going to the website, but if you want to tell your friends, they can go. But we'll give you a free copy if you make an appointment with us tonight. Just to come in and review, see what you have, okay? See what's going on in your retirement. So we're going to talk about three different things. First one being Social Security, and Ted's going to come up and talk about that. He's been with us for about, what, 3 years now? 2 years he's been with us. Like I said, I'm married to his sister, so I got to really be careful what I say because he'll yell at me if I talk about his sister. But she's the best. She's our HR person at DPS Advisor. So we're truly a family business. So with that, Ted's going to talk about Social Security.
All right. Thanks, John. Welcome, everyone. As John just said, I've been with the company for 2 years. I've been in the financial services industry for over 35 years. As kind of the new guy to the company, I have the benefit of talking to you about Social Security, which I know is a very important topic for everybody in this room. My issue is, though, that the Social Security Administration itself conducted a survey in 2019 when they determined that there are over 9,000 different ways for a married couple to file for Social Security, and there are over 2,700 rules that govern Social Security. So I have to talk about 9,000 ways to file and 2,700 rules in 5 or 10 minutes. So wish me luck on that.
Clock's ticking.
The clock is ticking. So with all that said, with the big numbers I just talked about, there are really two questions people have when they come and meet with us in our office. Right? The first question is, will Social Security be there for me when I need it? And the answer to that question is yes, but. And the second question is, when is the best time for me to claim or file Social Security? And the answer to that question is, it depends. So you're going to get a yes, but, and an it depends tonight, all right? Some very concrete information there. All right, so let's answer the first question for you. And to do that, we're going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Social Security was enacted 91 years ago in 1935. All right, FDR enacted it. When it was first created, they chose the age of 65 as the full retirement age. All right, they thought 60 would be a little bit too early and 70 would be too late. 65 was chosen. Can anyone take a guess, 1935, what the average life expectancy was?
60.
59 and a half. So do the math, right? Full retirement age was 65. Average life expectancy was 59 and a half. All right, so they obviously were not expecting many people to live that long in retirement and to collect Social Security for a very long time. Here we are 91 years later. All they've done is increase the full retirement age from 65 to either 66 or 67, depending on when you were born. But can anybody take a guess what the average life expectancy now is for people who are born in the year 2026? If you're born this year, for women, it's about 79. For men, it's about 74. So the average is about 77 and a half. We all know that women live longer than men, but we're not going to debate that subject tonight as to why that may be. All right. So what the issue is, right, between baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, known as the millennials, for the first time, we now have more people collecting Social Security than are paying into the system. Last year alone, 77 million people collected Social Security. All right, so has anyone heard that Social Security is going bankrupt? All right, so what that means is there are more people taking money out, so the trust fund that had been built up over all of those years is actually getting close to being zero. They're estimating by the year 2033 or 2034, there will be no funds in the trust fund, okay? But there will always be people paying into the system, right? As long as Americans are working and being taxed, they're going to pay into the system. All right, so the thing that you need to consider, though, if you're already collecting Social Security or what you anticipate you're going to collect, if Congress doesn't take any action by 2033 or 2034, that 100%, whatever that number was that you were expecting to receive, you can then expect to get about 80% of it. All right, so that's a significant reduction potentially, and it's 7 or 8 years down the road. John's going to talk more about inflation, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But think about it, right? 7, 8 years down the road, when things are more expensive than they are today, your Social Security benefits may potentially get cut. to 80% of what they were. All right, so that's something that you need to consider, okay? Talk to your financial advisor about that, all right? So, what Congress can potentially do, and we think they're going to take some action, right? If you look at 2024, the Social Security wage tax was $168,000. In 2025, it was $176,000. We're updating these slides as we speak. For 2026, the wage tax was about $184,500. And what that means is, if you've ever looked at your pay stub, right, and you either see Social Security tax or FICA, people are always asking, who's the FICA guy that's getting 6.25% of my paycheck? Well, that's the Federal Insurance Contributions Act. That's what FICA stands for, and that's all the money that goes into Social Security. So we anticipate that they're going to continue. The wage tax is capped at that number up there. So if you make $200,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, for Social Security purposes, they're only taxing you up to the wage tax cap, okay? That's what that means, all right? They potentially also could increase the full retirement age from 67. It would not be unreasonable for younger people like John's son Luke, my nephew, who's about 25 now, where they could say to them, you know what, your full retirement age, instead of being 67, is going to be 70 years old. So we think they're going to take action. But what you need to do if you don't have a plan in place is anticipate what could potentially happen if they don't, and you're going to get 80% of what you thought you were going to get or that what you're already getting, because it will impact you either way, okay? The second question, right, when is the best time for me to claim or file Social Security? And as I said, the answer is it depends, all right? Everybody, we kind of look alike in the room as far as the age characteristics, but everyone's situation is unique. You may have family or friends who are saying to you, you know what, I took Social Security when I was 62, you should do the same thing, get the money as soon as you can. They may have your best interests in mind or in heart, but they may have no idea of what your personal situation is. All right, one of the things that we're going to tell you as financial advisors, it's a little strange, is to talk to your doctor, right? Do you have longevity? My parents are both still alive at the age of 86. I had a grandfather who lived to 94. So in my particular situation, I go to the doctor every year. I need to plan for longevity, right? So that's going to impact when I'm going to take Social Security, okay, or when I can, right? I just want to make sure that everybody knows you can you go back to the last second? You can take Social Security at the age of 62, right? That's the earliest you can take it. Your full retirement age, again, should be 66 or 67. Your maximum age should be 70. I want to make sure everybody knows, we actually get questions, can I wait till I'm older than 70 to collect Social Security? There's no benefit to do that, right? So if you're planning on it, take it at 70, all right? At 62, you'll get about 75% of what you would have gotten had you waited to your own full retirement age. If you waited till you're 70, you're going to get about 132%, all right? Between 67 and 70, they give you delayed retirement credits. So the government is guaranteeing you 8% per year between your full retirement age and the age of 70 at a time when you may be conservative in your investment portfolio. The government's guarantee you an 8% bump those years, all right? At age 62, I want to make sure everybody's aware, if you take it, but if you're working before your full retirement age, there's a very low threshold of about $24,000. If you have income above $24,000, for every $2 above that, the government's going to hold back $1. You'll get that back when you turn your full retirement age, but if it's money that you think you're going to get at that age, you might not get it all, right? The year that you turn your full retirement age, whatever that year may be, if you're still working, that $24,000 threshold bumps up to about $64,000. And then for every $3,000 above that, they hold back $1. So just make sure that you're aware that if you're taking it before your full retirement age, you may not get as much as you thought you were going to get, okay? You know, they call us the sandwich generation. Some of us may be taking care of financially of parents who are still living while we're taking care of adult children financially. And so what I'm trying to say is everybody's situation is unique. If you are sitting with your financial advisor, hopefully it's a fiduciary, make sure that he or she knows everything there is from a financial perspective. Are you married? Are you divorced? Are you widowed? All of those things go into your decision as to when is the best time to take Social Security, okay? Now, with all of that said, about all of those things that could be unique for you, what we do want to do, though, is actually show you a model of removing all of those things. We just want to show you how the numbers would work mathematically, all right? Taking Social Security at different ages. So, we have a married couple of Ron and Nancy. Now, the good news is everybody, I said earlier, if you're born this year, the average life expectancy is about 77. But if you're in this room, your average life expectancy now, if you're a married couple, one of you can expect to live into your 90s. The other can perhaps expect to live into your 80s. All right? So Ron is 60, Nancy's 58 in all three scenarios. Ron's life expectancy as a 60-year-old male is 85, Nancy's is 90 as a 58-year-old woman. They both decide to take Social Security at the age of 62. The cumulative value of the benefits for both of them combined is about $1.65 million, okay? Had they waited until each of their full retirement age at the age of 67, the cumulative benefit would have been $1.9 million, all right? It's about $280,000, $300,000 more, all right? Even though it's for a shorter period of time, because the monthly benefit jumped so dramatically for each of them, it gives them those added benefits. Now, mathematically, if they wait till their age of 70, if you remember, we said it's about 132% of their full retirement age. Ron's monthly benefit goes to about $3,800. Nancy's about $2,800 and some change. Their cumulative value of the benefits together is $2.1 million. So there's a difference of over $400,000. It's a condensed period of time. The income on a monthly basis is so much higher that in that scenario, from a mathematic perspective, it made sense for them to wait till they're 70 years old. Again, that's all, everything being equal. We're not taking any of the other things into account. We just want to make sure that you understand how that could look for you. All right, so I think my 5 to 10 minutes is up. We'll take a question or two. We're going to be here afterwards if you want to ask a kind of a personal question. But any questions on Social Security?
You said if you continue to work and receive your Social Security,
right?
They withhold, from $1 for each two. And when's it going to return?
Until your full retirement age.
Okay.
So if you're 66 or 67, whatever your full retirement age is, that's when that stops.
Yeah, but are they going to give me back whatever?
You get the money they withhold back when you turn your full retirement age.
As a lump sum? Or?
No, they add it into your payments after that. Yeah. Okay.
So okay, if you die earlier,
What's that?
if you die like in 2 or 3 years,
Right. So none of the plans we put in place are that you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. We want to make sure as fiduciaries that, number one, you never run out of money in retirement. You don't outlive your assets, right? And that your standard of living is what you want it to be compared to how you are when you're working. Can we plan for, something like that? We can't plan for that. But if there's a physical issue that you have that you can talk to your doctor about that does tell you something that I might not know about, then that is something that you need to consider when you're making your decision. Okay? Question?
With Nancy or Ron, let's say Ron passes and he's getting the higher Social Security, would it be transferred to Nancy?
Yes, right.
So Nancy could actually collect.
So in Social Security, right, your regular benefits, you have spousal benefits, and then you have survivor benefits, and each of those are different, right? If I didn't tell you, remember that they used to mail out those papers to everybody? So if you don't know now, they don't mail them out, but you go to ssa.gov, right? And it's a government site, and it's surprisingly easy, even though it's a government site, to create your own access, your own online access, and that'll give you all of those numbers. We've been told that it's you might not get the same information from different people, but if you call or go into your Social Security office and you have specific questions on how you could be impacted by things like that, they said that the response rate is pretty good nowadays. So again, everybody's situation is unique. Talk to the Social Security Administration, your accountant, and whoever your financial advisor is to make sure that if something changes where you're going to be impacted either way on how much you're collecting, that's included in the plan that you have in place for your retirement. All right? Again, I think that's enough questions for Social Security. I'll answer any questions you have afterwards, okay? I don't want to take too much more of John's time.
Good job.
All right, thanks.
The reason why we go over Social Security is to educate you on what would be best for you if you can figure that out. But the most important part of a retirement plan is your income plan, right? Because if you don't have enough income in retirement, then you're going to worry about relying on your kids, relying on other people for help to survive, right? So is that a concern? Like, a lot of people come into our office and say, I want to retire. John, can I retire? Do I have enough money to retire on? And my answer to them is, well, two things. Number one, I need to know what your expenses are. And then we need to know where your assets are. What kind of income do you have? Do you have a pension? Have you turned on Social Security? And if you haven't turned on Social Security, then we're going to help you decide which strategy would be right for you based on your situation. So I'm going to ask you guys, is creating an income stream in retirement and an income plan something that everyone here has done already? Have you done that with your current person? Have you set up an income plan? You know where your income's coming from? Okay, because if not, we will help you with that, okay? Because that's the key to a stress-free retirement. I talk about that on the radio show, TV show all the time. Key to a stress-free retirement is having more guaranteed income than your expenses. And that allows you to not make panic decisions when the market's changing and all that stuff. So that's why we talk about Social Security. So if you have an interest in any of looking at the conversations with that, you can use that sheet as a little notepad and say, hey, if I come into the office, let's talk about creating an income plan, okay? So the next topic we're going to talk about is, and I was giving an example on the show, is taxes on qualified plans. Who in the audience has an IRA, a 401k, 403b, 457, a qualified account that you put money away in and it's going to be there for retirement later on? Who has one of those accounts? Tax deferred. Mostly everybody. If you work at a company, you're putting money away into their 401k. If you work at a school, it's 403b, or a hospital, putting money away for retirement. And what most people don't realize is if you don't do tax planning strategies, you're going to pay more to the IRS than you have to. Okay? Are there any accountants in the room, people that do taxes for people? No accountants? Good. Because I'm going to say some stuff. I don't really mean it to them personally, but accountants don't educate us on what's the right thing to do in retirement. All they're focusing on is how to pay the least amount of tax in a current tax year. Okay? And they're not offering tax planning strategies. So most people deal with their accountant like this. They gather all their documents in January and early February. You send it off to the accountant. The accountant does your tax return. You used to meet them and get your return and mail it in, but now they do e-file, and you don't even see the accountant anymore, and that's it. You don't talk to the accountant again until next January, February. Is that pretty much what everyone's doing? Is your accountant meeting with you in September, October to give advice on how to reduce? We good? Okay, no worries. Who's meeting with their accountant in September and October? We always typically have one or two people that do that, which is great. And are you implementing strategies to reduce the taxes on your qualified plans? Because I'm going to go over a real life case. Because if you're not doing tax planning, I'm going to show you what the plan the IRS has for you. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Okay? And it's, who remembers the game Let's Make a Deal? Remember that game? Monty Hall was the host, right? A lot of people get a kick out of it. When Luke's here, he's young. These young kids don't know anything about Let's Make a Deal. So we're going to talk a little bit about Let's Make a Deal, okay? So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, income taxes and you, right? Our national debt, this slide, like Ted said, we're updating these slides. We crossed over $39 trillion in debt, our country.
Do you need the cane?
Let that sink in for a second. $39 trillion in debt. And our country doesn't make anything to sell at a profit to reduce the debt. How does our country collect revenue? Taxes, right? Where do you think tax rates are going? Not next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Where do you think tax rates are going? Does anybody think tax rates are going down in the next 20 to 30 years? Absolutely not, because Ted gave some numbers. There's going to be more retired people in the United States than working people in the United States. So that means tax revenue is going to be going down. So where's Congress going to go for revenue? You know how much money is sitting in 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, 457s? You know how much money is sitting in those accounts right now, untaxed? A little over $40 trillion. And you don't think Congress knows that? Who remembers Ronald Reagan? Ronald Reagan was a president. But before president, he was a governor. And before that, he was an actor, right? Ronald Reagan did a movie in 1939 or 40, and he was paid $1 million for that movie role. Do you know what the highest federal tax bracket was in 1939, 1940? 90%. Ronald Reagan paid $900,000 in income taxes on his $1 million salary in 1939. And I honestly think that if he was around today, you asked him why he got into politics, that might have been one of the reasons. Right? So tax rates are going to have to go up. We're in the lowest tax environment that we're going to be in the rest of our lives. And especially for your kids and grandkids. Because that's where all this qualified money is going to go. If you only do RMDs out of your accounts, you're never spending that money down. It's going to go to your kids and grandkids, and they're going to inherit the IRA. And then we're going to talk about what that's going to cost them. Okay? So let's go into, let's make a deal. So I know I gave an example of, on the TV show, we talked to somebody who had $750,000 on an IRA. Well, today I'll lower it and make it $500,000. So you have three options, right? Let's make a deal. Remember those doors? You had door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Okay, the IRS's plan for you is door number 1. So let's say you do nothing. And a 65-year-old person who's got $500,000 sitting in an IRA or 401k, 403b, 457, right? And they just let that money sit and grow to age 73. Their current advisor's not advising them to do any tax planning. Their accountant's not advising them to do any tax planning. And you just let that money sit and grow to 73 years old. Are a lot of you doing that? You're waiting until it comes time to take the money out, 73? Okay, if you're doing that, here's what's going to happen. And that money grew 7%. That's not a crazy rate of return, right? So I'm not saying anything outlandish, $500,000 in IRA. You guys are the save generation. You saved all your money. If you didn't have it, you didn't buy it. You didn't put it on a credit card like the young people do today. I remember my parents, I had to stop playing some sports when I was growing up because my father couldn't afford hockey skates, and we couldn't afford that. We lived in this town. We were regular, middle class, blue collar. My father was a hairdresser his whole life, until he got into selling insurance and stuff. So when you didn't have it, you didn't buy it, and that was it. There was no questions asked. So if you don't do anything, here's what's going to happen. Your IRA is going to grow for 7 more years until 65, 8 more years, to 73. And at 73 years old, that IRA is now worth $860,000. It grew from $500 to $860 in 8 years, earning 7%. Nothing crazy. But now the IRS comes in. Now your partner comes in, your partner who didn't work 1 minute to put any money in that account, who didn't take any overtime, didn't do anything to raise money for that account, now gets a piece of your money. And your RMD that year, you guys know what RMD stands for? Required minimum distribution. So once that starts, it never stops. And that first year at 73, you have to pull out $35,000, whether you need it or want it. And then it's $37,000. And then it's $39,700. And then it's $42,400. And increasing every year, every year. You have to add it to your tax return. And that goes on and on and on. And let's say, again, we need a date that you're going to pass, and we're living longer. So let's say we live to 90. Okay, if you live to 90, you would have pulled out $1 million, $1.1 million of distributions out of that IRA. And let's not even change the tax rate, 24%. Okay? You're going to pay $265,000 in income taxes on all those distributions. But it doesn't end there. Because there's still $1 million left in that IRA, and Congress knows that. And what did they just do 2 years ago? They changed the inheritance laws. So now when you pass away with $1 million left in that IRA, it goes to your children. They used to be able to take it over their life expectancies, which was in some cases 40, 50 years. Well, now it's a 10-year period. So let's say your child's 45 years old, inherits your $1 million IRA. 45 years old, is that probably your highest earning years in your life? 45, 50, somewhere around there. And now you inherit $1 million from your parents and you're all celebrating. But you got to take out $100,000 a year and add it to your income taxes on your largest salaries that you're ever earning. And you can't say no, you have to. So does that bump them up into a 30% tax bracket based on today's tax rates? Could that possibly do that? So let's factor 30% to the kids. They're going to pay $310,000 in income taxes on their inherited $1 million IRA. So that IRA that was worth $500,000 when you were 65 years old, and you did door number one because you don't want to change anything, you did no tax planning, the IRS is going to collect $575,000 in taxes on your IRA. Am I confusing anybody? Do you guys understand the number? It's pretty simple. Future value calculators, distributions, and then multiply it by a tax rate. Nothing crazy, okay? So door number one is do nothing, and you and your family are going to pay almost $600,000 in taxes on those distributions. Well, let's go to door number two. What if I can show you a way where you can get the same distributions that you had under door number one, but we cut the tax bill to $150,000? Would you be interested in seeing that? And if you're not doing tax planning, that's what you're giving up. People always want to know, what's the cost of doing nothing? Well, on your tax plan with a $500,000 IRA, it's $575 or $150. That's what? 300?
Yeah.
300 and something thousand bucks?
25.
325? You could save by just doing tax planning, just coming in, getting a second opinion, and running your numbers. We feel it's so important, we built a website for these numbers, dpstaxbill.com. You can go to that website, you can run your numbers and play around with the tax rates, play around with the interest earnings on the account, play around with all of it. And in a click of a button, your numbers will come out. That's door number two. Then there's door number three. Using some creative tools, financial tools that are out there, what if I can cut that tax bill to $62,000? Would you be interested in that? That's what we do every day at DPS Advisors. We call it our DPS report, the Diversified Planning Strategies report. It's going to show you how to create guaranteed income, increasing income throughout your life. So you never have to worry about running out of money, never have to worry about the market dictating how much money you're going to take out, because I'm going to talk about market volatility in the next 2 minutes. It'll talk about tax planning strategies. So the DPS report is what you're going to get when you come in and sit with us for an hour. No cost, no obligation, and we'll run your numbers. We'll show you how to create these strategies, and no obligation. Does that interest anybody here? Is anybody interested in that? So I'm going to ask you, as from one business owner who runs a family practice talking to people who we would love to educate and empower is you say yes and just meet with Ted and Sue in the back and say, hey, come see us in our office for an hour. No obligation. You got to bring your statements, you got to bring your information, and we're going to run your numbers for you. You don't have to do anything. You don't want to go to the website because some people aren't tech savvy, like I'm not really tech savvy, but you could come to the office, we'll run the numbers for you. And we'll show you, we'll educate you and empower you, and then you make a decision, okay? Would that be interesting for anybody in the room? So, again, our calendar's back there. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we wrap up. But everybody here should be checking that off. Yeah, I want to at least run tax planning numbers, okay? So we have door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. First one's $575 in taxes. The next one's $150. The third one's $62.5. All I'll ask you is which tax bill do you want to pay? We had a doctor sit in one of these chairs, I think that chair right there, in November of last year. And this is an extreme case. I'll tell you the numbers really quick. Extreme case, he was a retired doctor, had rental properties, a pension from the hospital, did not need his $5 million IRA, okay? Now it's an extreme case. Not everybody has a $5 million IRA, but the numbers work, okay? He sat there, he said, he came and met with us in our office, and he said, my main objective is to pass on this money to my daughters, 2 daughters, as cheap as possible. So we ran his numbers. So over his lifetime, and he was 72 years old when he came to meet with us. He was turning 73 this year, 2026. So his RMDs were going to kick in. His RMD was $265,000. Ridiculous, right? So we ran his numbers. His numbers were astronomical. Income to him plus then income to their children was going to be somewhere around $30 million. But they were going to pay $18 million in income taxes. We implemented a plan on December 15th of last year, cut his tax bill to $2.25 million. Same distributions to him and his grandkids and his kids, and he cut the tax bill from 18 million to 2.2. Now, I'm not here to say that paying 2.2 million tax bills fun, but paying 18 million is not fun either. And we cut it down that much because he listened. He took advantage of our offer. He was not under any obligation. We showed him how to do it. His accountant wasn't talking to him about it. Neither was his financial advisor. And on December 20-something, right before Christmas, we implemented this strategy. And it was actually a little funny, but when we had to submit the stuff on the computer, I made him hit the submit button so that he knew what he was doing. And he obviously signed a waiver, understanding that he created a large tax bill this year, but fully aware, and we cut his tax bill. You could do exactly the same thing on your numbers, but you got to take us up on our offer, okay? So door number 1, 2, and 3. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about inflation real quick, okay? Because not a lot of people are factoring in inflation. Who really thinks inflation's 3%? Does anybody think it's 3% up here in North Jersey? I don't know. You go to a steakhouse now, the prices are double what they were like a year and a half ago. It's crazy. Gas is nuts. I mean, gas is crazy, but everything's expensive. Groceries, everything is expensive. Clothes, everything, right? There's no way inflation's 3%. I think it's double digits. We can argue about that, but let's say it's 6%, right? The true cost of inflation, when you factor all goods and services. Do you know that at 6% inflation rate, your expenses are going to double every 8 years? So if you don't have a rising income plan in retirement, you can't just take the same amount of money. You retire at 65 and you build a plan for $7,000 a month in income, and it's going to stay $7,000 for the next 25 years because you're going to run out of money. Because 8 years from now, you're $4,000. Let's say your expenses are $4,000. They're going to be $8,000 next 8 years from now. And then after that, they're going to be $16,000. And then after that, they're going to be $32,000. Not because you're buying more stuff, but because you're spending the same amount, but it costs more. I mean, you're buying the same stuff, but it costs more because of inflation. Nobody comes into our office and says, oh yeah, I'm factoring in inflation. I got increasing income. Every 3 years, my income bumps up. My retirement plan's all set. Nobody's doing that. We'll show you how to do it. It's not that hard. okay, how to create an increasing income stream in retirement to combat inflation. Do you know a person 65 years old, a couple 65 years old, can expect to pay $315,000 in health care costs in retirement? AARP did a study. So a single person, you just cut it in half, 150 some odd thousand bucks, right? Who has a plan to cover for the medical expenses? And I'm not talking about long-term care stuff. I'm talking about premiums, prescription costs, deductibles, co-insurances. Who's got a plan in place to cover health care? And then lastly, who's got a plan in place to cover long-term care needs? Because today, if you buy a long-term care policy, you're spending between $10,000 and $15,000 a year. Who's doing that? Who can afford to do that, right? But there's tools out there that can show you how to protect yourself if you just listen, analyze, educate yourself, and then you can make a great decision and empower yourself. So that's the stuff that you're going to get with our Diversified Planning Strategies report. So that's another thing you can check off on the paper. Hey, I want to hear about the, those healthcare issues and the long-term care. What can I do to protect myself against that? And inflation. How do I create, an inflation hedge? Okay? Any questions on anything I just talked about for 15 minutes? Taxes on qualified plans. Anything. Creating income streams. No questions? I was that good? I explained everything that well? Okay. See that, Ted? It's pretty good.
Better.
So let's talk about, I hit too fast. Let's talk about market volatility. Why does it affect the people in this room, right? Because most of your working lives, you were building and accumulating, right? And you have to be aggressive and you're building, and it doesn't matter if the market drops because you're buying more shares of whatever you're contributing into, your 401k, 403b. So you don't care about market volatility. Well, guess what? The day you retire, if you don't have a pension and you don't have guaranteed income, Social Security is not going to be enough, okay? If you only have Social Security as your guaranteed income stream, it's not going to be enough. You're going to need to create income from your assets. And once you start having to do that, you can't afford a 2022 and drop 25% in your portfolio. Because if you drop 25% in your portfolio, so is your income. And we're going to show you a little bit about that as well. So market volatility. When we go from accumulation to oh my gosh, distribution, lost my train of thought. Good job. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Go to distribution, your investment philosophy has to change. Everyone comes in, I said to you before, if you choose to come work with us or let us take a look at your stuff and give you a second opinion, we're going to ask you to bring your statements, right? And everyone's so proud. They come in, they got their big box firm statement, and they're like, oh, this is great. I got stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And I'm like, okay, where's your protected money? Like, what are you talking about? I got a bond portfolio. I go, bonds aren't safe. You know that, right? Bonds aren't safe. Bonds are affected by interest rates. And what's been going on in the last 15 years with interest rates? Up, down, up, down. Bond values have been going up, up, down, all over the place, right? So think about, in 2022, you have that 60-40 balanced portfolio, right? 60% equities, 40% bonds. And you think you're safe. Your current advisor said you got bonds, you're protected. The stock market goes down. Bonds are going to be safe. They might even go up a little bit because they work inverse of stocks. Who's heard that story? That's a lie, okay? Bonds don't work inverse of the markets. If stocks can go up or down, has no effect on bonds. Interest rates have an effect on bonds, not market value, okay? So what happened in 2022? In 2008, the Federal Reserve, we went through a recession, right? The market was down a ton. Banks were failing, mortgage companies failing, corporations were borrowing money left and right. It was really bad time. We had to go into a recession, and we did. And what did the Federal Reserve do? They lowered interest rates to 0. It was great for mortgages. Everybody refinanced, right? Everyone's now sitting with a 2.5%, 3% mortgage rate. That's great. But for people in fixed income, it stinks because you're not making any money. Not making any yield for income. So they were saying, and they kept it low for years and years and years. And so no bond values, there was barely any movement. So it looked like it was a safe investment inside your portfolio. But what happened in 2022? The Federal Reserve finally which they should have done 10 years prior, started raising interest rates. And what happened to bond values? They dropped tremendously. So the person with this 60-40 balanced portfolio went down 25% in 2022. So imagine you have your $1 million portfolio, your $1 million IRA, split between stocks, bonds, and mutual funds because your advisor said you're diversified, and in 2022, your portfolio went down 25%. You thought you were protected, but you're not. Everything in that bucket's got risk. So if you lose 20% of your portfolio, what's the first thing most of you are gonna do when you take an income from it? You're going to cash. You're going to panic, right? Because if my income's tied to it, not everybody is like you, can be aggressive, and that's fine. I'm agreeing with you. But a lot of people go to cash. You know how much money is sitting in CDs right now that's not invested? Trillions of dollars, because everybody went to cash because they panicked, because their income is tied into their portfolio. So if you lose 20% and now go to cash and get a 3% return, it's going to take you 7.5 years to get back to even. If you lose 30%, it's going to take you 12.1 years to get back to even. Even if you use an 8% return and lose 20%, it's still taking you 3 years to get back to even at an 8% return if you're still in the market, right? But when you're in the market, you're using your accounts for income. That's a problem. You can't have a 25% drop in your portfolio when you're using it for income. So, because here's what happens. $100,000, you lose 25%, you only have $75,000 left in that portfolio. You need a 33.33% return to get back to even the next year. How aggressive are you going to be when you lose 25% in your portfolio and you're using it for income? Because let me give you that example. We just talked about RMDs. Right? When you're accumulating your account and not touching it, you could say, yeah, you know what, 25% drop in my portfolio, I don't care. I don't need the money, I'm gonna wait, it'll come back, it always comes back. But let's say that was your first year that you had to do an RMD. So your $1 million IRA, you have to pull out 40,000 bucks. And let's say 2022 was your first year at 73 years old. Your portfolio was down 25%, so it went from $1 million to 750. Now, you can't just sit there and let it recover. You have to pull out $40,000. Now you have 710. So in 1 year, your portfolio dropped almost 30% if you have market losses inside your portfolio. Does that make sense? You can't have all of your money in Wall Street in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. It's just not going to work. Not when you're in the distribution phase of your life. And as we get older, we have less time to recover. There's not enough time to recover. So, what's the other thing that we hear all the time? This was done by an economist in the 50s. If you just take 4% out of your portfolio, it's called the 4% distribution rule. Has anybody heard of that? You take 4% of your portfolio, you'll never worry about running out of money. Okay, well, let's talk about years 2000 to 2009. Now, these are hard to see. I'm going to read them off to you. So you have $1 million portfolio. This gentleman came out with a chart that said you could pull 40 grand out and never worry about it. Okay, but it's based on your portfolio balance. So year 1, 2000, you have $1 million, you get 40,000 bucks. Well, what happened to the market that year? The S&P was down 10.5%. The next year, because you're pulling 4% out of your account balance, you only get $34,000. And what happened in 2001? The market was down 13%. The next year, because your account balance is now only $500,000, your income is only 28,000 bucks. And what happened to that year? The market was down 28%. Or, I'm sorry, 26.38%, 23%. So in the first 3 years, it's called sequence of returns risk. The first 3 years, the market was down. This person never collected $40,000 ever, except for the first year. If you're going to let all your money sit in the market and let your distributions come from a market portfolio. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities, hedge funds, REITs, all those things that you hear about, all the things that the big box firms try and pitch you on. It's a diversified portfolio. You have a little bit of all that stuff. You're diversified. No, you're not. Everything in that world has risk. When we say diversified, I mean products or investments that never go down. It doesn't matter what the market does. And you don't want your income tied to your portfolio that's tied to a market. Because now the market dictates what your income's going to be. So, we created this slide about 25 years ago, my dad and I. We call it the 3 investment world discussion. As a fiduciary advisor to you, my job is to explain to you the pros and cons of every investment tool that's out there. So part of that DPS report you're going to get is going to be this sheet, and we're going to go over everything you can invest in. So this is you guys over here, investments, the world of risk, potential, growth, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, hedge funds, REITs, variable annuities. Your principal's not guaranteed. Not one dime is guaranteed. Yeah, you can get a 40% return, but you can also get a 40% loss. I'm not saying take all your money out of that, because you need some of it. That's how we do a rising income stream. But you need to put some of your money over here in the safe money protection. You know, banks offer fixed CDs. They offer money market accounts where your principal's guaranteed. Now, I'm not here to tell you put all your money in a bank, because that's the mistake too, right? I'm here to use a bank for an emergency fund. You know how many people come into our office with $300,000, $400,000 sitting in CDs, and they're like proud of themselves because they got a 3.5% rate, and inflation's running at 6%? They're dying a slow death. Right? You only have 6 months worth of expenses in the bank, because other than that, the bank's making money on you. They're using your money to make money. 6 months there. But they also offer equity-linked CDs. You know, insurance companies offer fixed annuities that work like CDs. But they also offer indexed annuities that create principal protection, but market-based returns with no risk. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you you're buying annuities. I have no idea. What I'm telling you is there's other tools out there that if you don't investigate, all your money is sitting at Wall Street and you're going to be stuck. How do we build an increasing income stream? Well, I'm using safe money worlds for the first years, 5, 10 years of my distributions. So it doesn't matter what the market's doing. I'm using Wall Street from years 10 through 20 and 20 through 30. We're bucketing your money. So I'm going to use Wall Street. I know I'm not touching it for 10, 15 years. I don't care what that bucket does. It could go down 25%, but I'm not touching it. The closer I get to using that money is when I'll tone that risk down in there. So people say to me, well, you're going to tell a 70-year-old person they should be aggressive? I'm like, absolutely, especially if they're not touching the money for 10 years. I don't care what their age is. What's the purpose of the money? It's to grow for 10 years so I can have a larger pot to make more income 10 years from now. Having money in every one of these worlds is a truly diversified portfolio, where some of your money cannot go down because of market risk, geopolitical risk, interest rate risk, whatever. Having some of your money safe. And I don't care what tool you use. My job is to show you the options, and you pick what's right for you. That's what we do. That's what you're going to get with the DPS report. So we spent, an hour or so talking about 3 different topics. Social Security, how to maximize the benefits in Social Security. We talked about taxes on qualified plans. We talked about market volatility and how to invest. I'm asking you tonight, if you have any concerns about those 3 topics, if we talked about anything that shook your brain about, wow, we never heard any of that stuff, take us up on our offer. We're going to give you guys an opportunity to come in. I'm going to give you a free copy of my book. And when the new book comes out, I'll send that one to you too. It's at the publishers right now, so I don't know when the printing is going to be done. Come in, we'll run your numbers. You'll get the DPS report. It's a second opinion. If you had a heart issue, are you going to one doctor and them fix that? You're going to go to a couple of doctors to get a second opinion. And that's what you should be doing with your money. And we're not going to put any stress or obligation on it. You're going to get this report. It'll go over the analysis. You'll get a Morningstar on your investments. Who here has an investment account? Have you ever done a Morningstar report on your account? Have you ever seen what you heard of Morningstar? They're the largest and best analyzation company for finances in the world. We'll run a Morningstar report for you. I can't tell you how many people say I've never seen that. And they're with their same broker for 25 years. I'm like, they're not running Morningstar reports for you? It tells you everything about your investments. Your bond allocation, the credit quality of the bonds, your stock intersection. It tells you all of that. We run that for you for free. So you'll get that in our DPS report. All you have to do is take us up, make an appointment, come see us in the next 2 weeks or so in our Roseland office, not far from here, and we'll spend an hour with you and just talk about, why you came, and we'll give you that DPS report. We'll run your numbers, but you need to bring your statements if you're going to come, and then we can do the analysis. And then we'll meet again, and we'll go over what the report says. It's pretty simple. No obligation, no cost, no stress. I like stress-free. I'm doing this way too long. I like stress-free. Sure.
Well, sounds good. Can I understand, so after we were to do this, how do you guys eventually?
Exactly. We're wealth managers, right? We charge a fee for what we manage. And one thing a fiduciary has to do is explain how they get paid. Now, it's different for the amount of money we manage. If we're managing $10 million, that person's paying one fee. If I'm managing $100,000, that person's paying a different fee. We'll give you our fee scale for what we're managing. But I'm not going to charge you a thing to run these reports. You could come to my office 3 times, and you're not going to get any stress. You're going to get a cup of coffee, nice greeting from Sue. We're going to have great meetings. We have a cafeteria, have lunch if you want it, and we'll analyze your stuff. We've been doing this way too long. I'm not going to stress anybody out. So one last thing, if you're interested, Sue and Ted's got our calendars back there. We're pretty busy from the Wealth Council show to our DPS, the PAPA report. Our calendars are pretty packed. And if you want to come see us in the next 2 weeks, just stop real quick on the way out. They'll give you an appointment card. And if you go home tonight and the appointment you picked today, because you didn't have your calendar, it's a conflicting date, just call the office and reschedule. But get a date on the calendar in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Come see us. It's going to be stress-free, and we'll figure out, what's going on, why you came here. Maybe we can educate you and empower you as well.